Hello, I'm David Hughes. Welcome to Your Perfect Body, the podcast of the Esoteric Teaching community. Today we're going to discuss the big questions, a theme that we'll return to again and again in our study of the esoteric teaching. Sooner or later in life, you will encounter one of the big questions. That's capital B, capital Q. It's only a matter of time before something you experience sets you wondering, where did the universe come from? Why was I born? What's the purpose of life? Or even, what's going to happen to me after death? It's fair to say that your response to these questions makes the difference between success and failure in life. The big questions are also the hard questions, capital H, capital Q. If they were easy, everyone would have good answers to them. Of course, there are plenty of folks who claim to have answers to those questions. It's just that few of their answers are any good. I was just reading an article about how to be a great scientist. The author knew and worked with many great scientists over a long and distinguished research career. During that time, he studied them to try to determine what made the difference between a merely good scientist and a really great one. His conclusion? The really great scientists had the courage to ask the really hard questions and the determination to set aside less important work for long enough to answer them properly. This advice translates well to life in general and spiritual life in particular. To be fully successful in life, you have to have the courage to confront the really big questions and the determination to put aside less important things and just research those questions until you can answer them well. Otherwise, your life will be just ordinary, mediocre, run-of-the-mill. This is what spiritual life is all about. You put aside the trivial things in life and just focus on the big questions until you get a practical realization of them. If you can do this, then you will transform your consciousness and your life from material to spiritual. You will accomplish the purpose of human life and earn promotion to higher realms of existence. The esoteric teaching exists to ask and to help us answer the big questions, the hard questions of life. The most important questions in life automatically lead us to the edge of the abyss, to the inconceivable. As soon as you try to research the inconceivable, you require a source of knowledge that is beyond human research, human intelligence, and human ability. The esoteric teaching directs us to the ancient Vedic literature, which is spiritual literature of the highest order, of divine origin. This is necessary to answer the big questions conclusively. For example, we may ask, what is the origin of the universe? The scientists may speculate some theories and argue endlessly which one is correct. But can anyone actually perform an experiment to prove their theory of the origin of the universe? Of course not. The whole thing happened so long ago, we can never subject it to scientific observation. So, according to the scientists' own standard, none of their theories about the origin of the universe can ever be proven. Hypothesis, observation, and experiment work well within the domain of phenomena subject to human control. But when we attempt to apply the same process to the inconceivable, it breaks down. Our scientific process of gaining knowledge by empirical investigation is useless when we cannot subject the phenomena to a controlled experiment. The scientific method does not work with phenomena that cannot be brought into the laboratory or subjected to objective, reproducible measurement. When it is applied inappropriately, it gives answers that anyone can recognize are absurd and irrelevant. The question of the origin of the universe is not a scientific question because it is outside the domain of phenomena subject to experimentation and observation. To answer this question, or any of the big questions, we have to rely on a source of knowledge that is comparable in power and scope. Therefore, the esoteric teaching is based on the ancient Vedic literatures, for only a source of knowledge of divine origin can address such big questions. Now, the interesting thing about Vedic knowledge is that it is all subject to individual verification through self-realization, in other words, subjectively. Remember, all phenomena based on consciousness are subjective and cannot be otherwise due to the absolute self-referential nature of consciousness. So while science can never prove any of their theories about the origin of the universe, the students of the esoteric teaching can verify the Vedic version of the origin of the universe, if they so desire, simply by meditation. So in the second part here, which is a little more spontaneous than the scripted part of the program, I'd like to welcome you all back. Happy New Year. Hope you had a great holiday, a safe and pleasant experience, and that you're ready for a new year of growth in consciousness and self-realization. That's what the esoteric teaching is all about. So we are here to help you with the big questions. All the easy questions have already been answered. We know how to make computers and jet planes and kill each other with ever-increasing efficiency. But we don't know, or most people don't know, the purpose of human life or why they're here, what the possibilities are of self-realization and spiritual experiences. So the esoteric teaching exists to give us material and methods that we can use to work on these questions, because they are all questions that involve consciousness, and therefore they are subjective rather than objective questions. In other words, we cannot bring these phenomena, such as the creation of the universe, or the law of karma, or the spiritual purpose of life, into the laboratory. We cannot subject reincarnation to a laboratory experiment. Why? Because we can't control these things. Because we can't control them, we cannot design a controlled experiment, because what's missing is the control. We can't control reincarnation. We can't control God. So we can't subject these big questions to the same kind of laboratory experiments that we use, let's say, for atomic physics. We can control atoms and electrons and stuff like that. That's easy. But controlling God? Oh, that's a whole different story, isn't it? So how we approach these questions makes a big difference in our quality of life and our attainment of success or failure in life. These questions aren't easy because they are beyond the usual range of human inquiry. Simply because we can't bring them into the laboratory, we need a source of knowledge that's comparable to the nature of the question in order to answer it. That should be pretty easy to understand. In other words, let's say we have $1,000 in the bank. Well, we can go and buy an old funky used car, or we can put a down payment on a new car with $1,000, but we can't go out and buy a brand new Corvette with $1,000 now, can we? Well, what to speak of a yacht or a big McMansion in a nice gated community that won't even do for a down payment. So if we have $1,000, our purchase options are limited. Okay, that makes a lot of sense when it comes to money, but how about science? How do we know things? And what are the different methods of knowing, and which are adequate or appropriate for different questions? Now, this is a much bigger, deeper set of questions and issues that we need to become acquainted with, otherwise we'll be cheated. The scientists like to think that science can answer everything, But the fact is, as soon as we try to apply science to a question that is too big to bring into the laboratory, it fails. The indicator is it starts turning up absurd answers like black holes, dark energy, dark matter.